You muted yourself, or at least it says you did. Hey, there's Mike Boone.
What's going on?
Not much, man. All right, folks. Thank you for shut down the music that's irritating me. I want to get some new music. I just have been lazy in the last few weeks to throw some new music on. I'll get around to it. I'm Jeff Colson. That's Boomer. That's Mike Boom. We are doing Junior Hockey Live. We're going to take on a couple leagues tonight, explain the leagues, give you a little bit of an idea how they work. And tonight we are going to feature the Superior International Junior Hockey League. It's the SIJHL, and then we're going to feature the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. Both these leagues are obviously Canadian, except for the SIJHL does have an American team too. So we'll jump right in. Hey, Mike, where were you this weekend? What'd you do?
Just got back from Philadelphia. We had a showcase there with the NAPHL. So my 16s and 18s had 8 games, 4 apiece over the last 2.5 days over the weekend. So I'm just getting back adjusted. That was a long weekend, that was for sure.
Yeah, we should probably also go through the counseling process to get you on the road for these long trips. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty important because it's not a, even though he's got a wing behind him, wings are not really in Mike's world.
No.
And maybe you should explain a little bit of this, Mike.
Well, I think the best way to describe it is I am not a good flyer whatsoever. So I can't stand being on planes, and it's just part of the job. So it's a nervous process to get in and off those things. That's for sure.
So it's a 12-step program, and it usually starts the day of the flight, sometimes the night before the flight. And for some reason, it might be because of my age, maybe my partial beard and white hair, but or maybe it's because I'm a pilot. But Mike has taken on this initiative to include me in his angst, in his worry, in his nervousness. So I have to talk him into the plane almost every time it flies now, which I find humorous, but I do appreciate that he looks to me to help him with this process. I don't believe I'm the only person. He's probably texted 80 people to try to get some calming, refreshing words about flight, but I'm glad to be included in that group, Mike.
Yeah, I do have a couple players I had coached in the past that are now pilots themselves, and sometimes they're kind enough to send me the turbulent report of like what's going on in the air for that
Nice.
day to kind of give me a heads up. So yeah, but I appreciate
It's that bad.
your your
You actually
calming.
have people sending you, you know, I can get you the app. You can have your own app that, as a pilot, you don't have to be a pilot to have these pilot apps we use.
Well, I think the reality is I might just have to start driving everywhere we go. So it's a stressful process for me to say the least.
Wow. Well, I worked out of the Rochester area again this last weekend. Like I said, I've been blessed this last month with having so many good teams coming in to visit Western New York. Everything from Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. That I've actually been able to stay in the local area to watch some good hockey. So U18, prep type hockey. So very fortunate. I was talking to some coaches, and this is kind of embarrassing because this doesn't happen to me often. But as you know, Mike, I fill out my schedule for the year and kind of plot out everything we're going to do for the whole year. So I know where you're at, I know where I'm at, I know where scouts are working at, and of course I'm the worst this year, disheveled wise, about being where I'm supposed to be or doing what I'm supposed to do. This moving houses and downsizing has just been a lot. But I'm on the phone with a couple advisors, a few advisors this week. I'm on the phone with a couple coaches. They're all going, "Well, we'll see you Friday." And I'm like, yeah. And I'm frantically looking around at all the different events going, okay, which event am I supposed to be at? Or which event was I at last year that they expect me to be at back this year? And I still haven't figured out which event I'm supposed to be at or which showcase or what series of games or what team. So I'm still kind of going, okay, now this is said to me several times this week, it's got to be something obvious that I'm just missing. But right now, I'm open to wherever I'm supposed to go. If anybody's got any comments or any ideas, PG ideas of where I should be going this weekend, let me know. We don't need any explicative answers for those that are haters out there telling me where to go. We're not that kind of show. So anyway, I don't know where I'm going this week. I'm going to be on the road somewhere watching hockey, but just don't know where yet. So I just hope I don't have to fly, because then buying a ticket at the last second costs money. Anyway,
True.
All right, you ready to roll?
I'm ready. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. You want to talk about the SIJHL first? Do you want me to explain it?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's get it up. Oh, look at that. I'm getting better at this all the time. Okay, so that's the NoJo. We'll jump over here. I've already got it loaded up. That's the SIJHL. For those that have never looked at it, this is the map. The gray on the bottom is Michigan. See if I can pull that up a little bit bigger for you there. The map on the bottom, you see the gray, that's Michigan. And Ontario wraps from the bottom of the thumb of Michigan all the way around the top of the Upper Peninsula. And you see the majority of the blue dots, those are the league for the most part, and they're northwest Ontario. I mean, this is up there. This is, you see where Wisconsin is, and Wisconsin being, down here. The Great Lakes are in white. Right now, the league only has one team in the United States. That's the Wisconsin Lumberjacks. Over the last few years, sometimes there's two teams in the United States, sometimes there's three. This league runs usually right around where it's at, 5-6 teams. That's about normal. This is a little bit of a different league. You can see the names of the towns because of the CJHL teams. Remember, the CJHL is a combination of many leagues. Right now, there's 9 leagues. Take away the one province of British Columbia, you can walk right across the Canadian, coast to coast Canada that borders the United States. Every one of the provinces that border the United States have at least one league. Ontario being the most populous, it has 2 leagues, and then you go right of Ontario. Excuse me, it has 4. I'm way off on that. Sorry. It has 4 leagues, and then you've got the Quebec area with 1 league, and then you get the Maritime with 1 league. We'll spend some time on Quebec and the Maritimes, but that's not really significant to players looking to march up the ladder. If you're using this for a league to jump from a Canadian Junior League to maybe the NUL or maybe the USHL, if you're a younger player, this is the top of the bottom 3, or it's in the bottom 3 of the 9 leagues. There's not much action in the Maritimes. There's not much action in the Quebec League for players looking to advance to the States. And there's very little action that comes out of this league to advance. Now, an advancement from this league may be to a Tier 3 junior program in the States. Rarely, if ever, do you see anybody from this league, even young players, that actually move up through. Now, you might get from this league into the into the SJHL Saskatchewan, which is the next Western province. That, if you notice, they're all on the border. Most of these teams are really close to the border of Saskatchewan, so that could happen. Most likely is not going to happen. Maybe what I can do is, let me see if I can pull up real quick the CJHL map. I know I've got one in my folder, but let me just see if I can get the map for us. If I can pull this up quickly, I'll kind of show you how it all sets up. And maybe it's not as easy as I thought. There's the leagues. Now they give you all the leagues. So this is a good site to know, though. This is the CJHL website if you don't use this league. And I'll pull up the Manitoba League and see if they give me the map there. And, of course, they don't. So let's not worry about that. Let's just get back and talking about the SIJHL. The league itself, it's a part of the CJHL, but it's not a league that's on a showcase schedule for many of the advisors, college coaches. Maybe you get some lower end Division III programs. I know one program that if we looked at, I bet you we'd see some action from this league. As of course, I'll walk through this with us. If I'm on the page and I'm on the subscription part of EJ, this is the Elite Prospect site, and I scroll down to the players, I find the green button, I click on the green button. Now, if I put on here, now we're looking at the SIJHL, I'm going to change from the SIJHL over to Division III. What I really want is the school. It's the D3 school. It's up in the Upper Peninsula of the United States. What's the program I'm looking for? The Finlandia. So I'm going to look at Finlandia because that's the only D3 program in Finland. Where are you, Finlandia? It sounds like an old Groucho Marx movie, because there was a place called Finlandia there. So anyway, let's look at Finlandia, and all I want to do is I want to pull up any of the players here and see where their background is. And of course, it's tough to do from here. I could do it more on the. I'm really screwing this up, Mike, because I wanted to pull up and show the
You're
roster.
taking us down a journey. I'm all tuned in and interested, and feels like a dead end here.
I'm going to take it a different way. I'm going to go Finlandia hockey, and we're going to walk in as the back door. So here's the men's hockey 22-23 men's hockey. And all we're going to do is we're going to see if they give us the players, and we look for their roster. Roster's over here, and I want to see where they came from. And they're not showing us the teams. Okay, a lot of times you pull this up. I'm striking out left and right on this one. There's other ways to do it, but I could go one by one on all these players. But I would assume that Finlandia is only going to be one of the few schools. You might get some schools in the upper Wisconsin area that also have players, a player or two. I can go to, here's the way I'll do it. Here's what we'll do. I knew I'd find a way. We're going to go into Division III. We're just going to go Division, NCAA Division III. Where are you?
I think you got to put NCAA first in there.
Okay, way to just make me feel completely incompetent and unprepared today. There we go. All right, now we'll do the same exact thing here. Once we get the NCAA Division III up, why aren't you coming up now? Let's do it again.
So while we're waiting,
how often? Broadcast and I'm waiting.
How often do you scout this league when you're going about your
zero,
your weekly
zero
cadence?
Zero. Okay, here we go. Here's NCAA Division III hockey. Here's a list of all your teams. The team I was just talking about is Finlandia University. It's up here. So I'm going to go down to that green box right below the player stats for this season. I'm going to hit this box here, and I'm going to put in this league. I'm going to put in SIJHL. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking for players that are playing Division III hockey that came out of the SIJHL. So I click the button to put the filter on, and let's see what we get. Okay, so this is all of D3 hockey, and we've got 49 players, plus goalies, plus 9 goalies. So you're looking at 58 players out of one league. That this is for 4 or 5, possibly 6 years worth of NCAA division players. And if we do this by games, you're going to see that this list is even shorter by actual games played. So you look at the bottom of the list, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 to 10 players that aren't significant there. Games played with the goalies, two games for a freshman at this time of year would be possible. But I want you to look at where they're playing at to kind of give you an idea. There's a very narrow window here. Northland has got 1, 2, 3. I bet you if I go through the list, there's Finlandia. I would expect that. And then some of these other kids, they're just really, really selected schools that even look in this league. Obviously, Fredonia is one. Fredonia's got like 5 kids in this name on this list. So 10% of the kids are going to Fredonia. 10% of the kids are going to what was the school? Northland. A couple schools are filling this list. Buff State's got a few kids on here. There's the SUNYs. They've got a couple on here. And the only reason I'm saying this is it's just not a league. Just to give you comparison on this, if I go up here and I put in the NOJO, which is right next to them, we're going to talk about the NOJO a little bit later, and I put the NOJO in, and I hit the filter, you can see that we're much deeper in. We're at 113 players plus 12 goalies. Part of it, the NOJO is a little bit bigger, not much as far as the amount of teams, but it just has a bigger bandwidth. It's more schools actually look at the NOJO. More advisors have players up there. And the NOJO, as you'll see in a little bit, actually more people spend time watching the league and paying attention to what's going on there. So does that make sense?
Yeah, and so for the kids that do decide to go and play in the SI, where do you think their path is going to take them? Is it into another junior league that's a little bit higher, more competitive? If they top out in the SI, what are they looking as like a best case scenario for their career?
So that's a great question, and I've put there's some videos out there under Junior Hockey Advisor dealing with this. But if I look at the SIJHL, and this is a league that I would say this is a league for continuance, people that really enjoyed playing in their hometown. You get a lot of kids that don't progress past the SIJHL, which is not uncommon, but this is very similar to some of the junior B leagues up in some of the smaller towns in Canada. People just love playing hockey, and they continue. The price is decent up there to play junior B in the smaller towns in northern Ontario, and going out east and west of there in the provinces. So even though this is a CJHL league, it doesn't perform the same way the CJHL does. So
the kids in those areas play in that league rather than play midget hockey somewhere because it is a little bit better from a competitive standpoint than midgets because you have older players in the league, or are these kids after high school?
So I've had that conversation with a lot of people that are on that border, because if you're in the northwest border of Ontario, if you're on the Ontario side, your closest city, and maybe I've got to do this, I'll pull up a map of the area. So if we look at, can I get this map over there? I'll just open this map here. Technology, man, I'm working this tonight. Let's see, the primary display. Okay, so we've got a map here, and I think you can see that. Is that clear on the?
Yeah, you can see it.
So if we get up in this area here, and you're looking at north of Minnesota, and you start looking, if you're up in this part, you see there's a lot of lakes, but there's not much land until you get over into this area here. And what you hear a lot of people say is they their nearest place for a Canadian to play is going into the Winnipeg market.
Okay.
So, that's a long drive, but there are these junior teams that are pocketed in this area here that, yeah, I mean, it is feasible and it is done by a lot of players where at 16, they've got the option of going to Winnipeg to continue with their midget hockey. And if they're good enough and there's a track for them, maybe that's what they do. If you're not quite there or it's not feasible for you to do that, then you might be staying in the West right there and playing for one of these SIJHL teams. There's not much options in that area for hockey just because the population's not there. That's cottage country for a lot of people, and so they're going up there to stay in the summer. But for wintertime, this part of Ontario is all you got to do is drive it in the wintertime. If you're looking to go to Winnipeg and you're working your way across from different parts of Ontario, maybe you're coming from Nickel Country over here, and you're making your way across. It's just long, straight. Don't see much for a long time. So interesting area, but that does come through. Let's jump on and see who's got some things to say. Yes, this is we got this game's up from Viper. Yes, this is a pay-to-play league. I'll get us back up on the screen here, so I'm happy. Another question is oh, you're right. I'm calling that area Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's over. I'm sorry. That's like me calling Ohio. Well, I've got other names for Ohio because of Ohio State, but that's like calling Ohio Pennsylvania. I apologize. That's Manitoba. And as much as I drive up in that area, I should know that. Silly me. Thank you for correcting me on that, Viper Shark 66. Francisco says, sorry, fellows, but when does the show start? It's on. It started. Tonight we went a little early. Apologize, but remember, these are all recorded, so you can watch this at your own leisure here. Question comes up, do players from the Null Northeast market go into the OHL rather than prep route or to USHL to college route? That's a Mike. Do you want to address that? You want me to address that?
You can start, and I'll chip in if you miss anything.
So, do players go into the OHL? Yes, they do, but not usually when they get up to the Null or to the USHL. Once in a while, you'll get a USHL kid that's really high end that'll leave the USHL and go over to the O, and that's usually because they've had a pro team influence them. They've had an agent that's been leaned on by a pro team to get them into a certain team because uh, they are going to go on the draft and somebody's projecting them to be drafted at a certain place by a certain team, and they want them to play in a system that's more convenient for that staff to either watch the kid or that they're playing a style that they want the kid to play. More of a NHL style game that the OHL does play more than the USHL. Do they? The college route is, you'll get some kids out of the Southern Ontario's, the CCHLs, and the OJHLs, and of course the BJ and the BCHL and the AJ. I'm trying to say BCHL and AJ at the same time. That doesn't work well. It comes out is a BJ, and that's not what I was trying to say. Anyway, the majority, they're coming out of the USHL, the North American Hockey League, the NAL, and the BCHL. That's the route for NCAA players for the most part. There's some other little specks and sprinklings, but they all funnel into those three leagues for the most part. And that's where the vast majority of your players, I'd say over 90%, maybe closer to 95%, come directly from those leagues. They may have been committed somewhere else, but they actually play in those leagues before they go. Does that sound good, Mike? I'll put the question back up so you can see it.
Yeah, I think the other scenario that a kid may, it could have even started in the North American League or USHL and then went over to the OHL would be as if they have bad grades or their academics aren't in line where it's, test scores, things like that. So there's limited college opportunity for them. So in that case, they'll go over and play in the Canadian major juniors.
Yeah, and remember, it's also social because kids that grow up in Manitoba or grow up in Saskatchewan, grow up in Ontario, and they're growing up around the Western League, they're growing up around the OJ or the OHL. There's a different sense of your path if you can play on a local team like the London Knights, Sarnia, Windsor, you've grown up watching these kids. The barns are full. They put on a real pro-like process. Their game night experience is really good. It's good. It's really good hockey, and you can be a superstar in your local market or a market closer for your family. Canadians look at this different than Americans do. Americans think they have to stay pure for the scholarship, and it's very true. If you want to play at an American school, there's a purity to the NAL and the USHL and the BCHL and stay in that route. If you're looking to play at the highest level and you're in Canada, that may not be as much of an issue, or it's a non-issue. You'll go right into the OHL because they offered you. And remember, there's money that's given to players for scholarship for every year they put in and participate in the league. In fact, it's much better. The conditions are much better over the years. Is the threat and the process of unionizing OHL or major junior players has come into play. There's an improvement there, and because of the name, image, and likeness that American athletes get now, where there's money involved, now it's starting to even look different because now a great Canadian player says, if I go to Minnesota and play, I can get income, legal income coming in to play at Minnesota. That's, as much as my value of my image and likeness and name are, I get money for it. I can do commercials, I can sign jerseys, I can sell any kind of t-shirts or whatever I want to do and make a buck. So this is changing and shifting this whole thing about pro athlete. I think it's going to go away, fairly soon. That's my personal opinion, because now, what's a pro athlete? There's guys playing, the University of Michigan with all those first round picks, with a barn that fills up like that, with all the media exposure they get. Those kids are making some good money. Those kids are walking out and going into pro hockey and saying, I've got to play in the AJHL for less than six figures. Why? They'll end up staying in college longer because, unless they're going straight to the NHL, of course. But they'll stay and play 4 years now because they make a good buck at it. So it'll shift a little bit. I hope that helps a little bit on the question. Stephen, thanks so much for the question.
One of the things you said, though, that I want to just touch on that is way different than it ever has been. When you look at the USHL and some of the Canadians that have come over, I'm here in Chicago. So if I look at the Chicago Steel, Owen Power was a Canadian that came over, and then you have the Fantilli brothers. Owen Power was a first overall NHL draft pick. Him growing up in Canada, you would think for sure he'd be playing in the OHL or the WHL, things like that, and be an absolute stud. That's a shoo-in to go right into the NHL. They were able to, get him into the Chicago Steel. Then he goes to the University of Michigan. He's still a first overall pick. Adam Fantilli, who, if anyone follows the NHL draft for this coming, draft this year, he's probably a top 3 pick. It's probably him number 2 or number 3 to the Russian Michkov for, who's after Bedard. But again, he came to the Chicago Steel. That whole lure of going to the college route and to the NHL and maybe the NIL played a factor in it and whatnot. But those are kids that 5 to 10 years ago would have never considered coming to the USHL. They would have just stayed and played in the OHL or
Right.
Wherever they're from.
Yeah. I agree to an extent on that. I think the NIL has just put this whole thing on steroids, because now, kids that definitely would not have been looking at it are looking at it and say, and think about it. Even if you're a mid-level player, a mid-level elite player, and you're a Division I candidate, and you're getting scouted at the nominal pro level, meaning they're still watching you, but at best you're going to be in the 5th through 8th rounds of the NHL draft. Now they're going, hey, I can go get an NIL deal at North Dakota or Wisconsin. Maybe I make $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month on top of my scholarship. Now that means a little nicer car, maybe send some money home. That's a nicer apartment. A lot of little things happen there that just make life easier for athletes versus playing in the major junior system, which it takes a toll. You're playing 80, 90 games a year with playoffs. Go to college, you're playing 30 games. You're working on your game. There's a lot more development time, a lot more building. Well, first of all, working on the education during the day and practicing in the afternoon. It's not a bad situation for a kid to get $250,000 worth of education, $250,000 worth of education, and make some money, and still be considered, an athlete that's moving up into the pro ranks after they're done. Not bad. Even if you don't go pro, you get some extra money on there. So, we just got Steven coming in saying he did 1 year at Kimball as well. I'm assuming he's talking about one of the players you were just talking about, Mike. I was not completely tuned in. I know you talked about Power, and I know you talked about the brothers. Yeah, so one of them did. Jump on, Steven, and tell us which player we were talking about, because honestly, I don't know which one you're talking about. So anyway, you want to get into the Northern League now?
Yeah, the NOJ.
So let's jump into the NOJ and talk a little bit about how it works. And I'll get out of that screen. I'll get into this screen here, and we'll jump over into the Northern. So JHL. And here we go. Come on up, please. I must have too many cameras going on, or let's do that again. This is where you're supposed to be tap dancing, Mike, and talking and telling great stories.
Spinning plates over here.
Yeah. Don't you have a little chihuahua that does backflips off a stool or anything? Okay. Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. And why did it not bring up the map? I had it all preset before we came on, and then I started jumping around and lost it. Anyway, Northern Ontario Hockey League.
Up in one of your tabs up there on the far right.
No.
Is that the CJ that you pulled
tabs? Because then I've actually got to put my glasses on and look at them. I can talk about pretty much without needing to pull this up. The Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League is everything east of the SIJHL. It covers that all the way down the eastern Great Lakes, southern, all the way into the edges of Ontario, meaning when you get into the Toronto market, it stays northwest of Ontario and follows the eastern track of the Great Lakes up all the way up into the Soo. You see that there's two teams. I don't know if you can see that. I'll pull it up a little bit. You've got a Sioux team on each side of the borders there, and everything else falls in that cottage country all the way down along the coast there. So it's a great way to look at it. I can show you a little bit better on the. Let's see if I can pull up. It's just not going to let me. I'm not having a good night, man. I am struggling.
All thumbs tonight.
All thumbs. I would take that as a compliment tonight. So if we look at that map again, and I pull up, let's get over here. So you see Michigan here in the middle, and if you kind of go up from here and walk your way around this way, that's Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League country up in here. Over here is where you've got the SIJHL. And then you get down in here, the CCHL is your outer rim on the top of Ontario here. Your OJHL is actually the part of Ontario, kind of southwest Ontario and southwest of Toronto and southwest of Ontario here is where that falls into place. So you've got 4 leagues. CCHL, OJ covers Toronto and East. The Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League and the SIJHL covers the northern part of Ontario, this whole peninsula here, and works its way all the way over into right by the Upper Peninsula here in Michigan. So a different league. It's a bigger league by a few teams. It's got 12. It's double the size. 12 teams. Look at the names though. Sudbury. If you don't know where Sudbury is, if you go to Toronto and just keep driving north and north and north and north, you'll run into Sudbury. It's way up here. Let's see if I can move that map a little. But you're talking about probably 5-6 hours north of Toronto. This is a league that's tough to play in. It's a lot of driving, it's a lot of cold, a lot of straight and narrow roads, and so you see Sudbury way up here. What's famous about Sudbury? Nickel. Good hockey up there. Also, Letterkenny is filmed in that area. If you are familiar with the Canadian comedy show, Letterkenny, Letterkenny is filmed up there. Also, the Carlyles. Craig Carlyle is a friend of mine. His dad, Randy Carlyle, longtime Hall of Fame player, longtime coach, Anaheim Ducks, Stanley Cup champion, right there. How do I know that? Actually went up there for a squirt game. So that was like a 10-hour drive from our house. And it was a springtime squirt game. And they had the Stanley Cup on display for the day. So when we actually got up there, we actually saw the Stanley Cup. So long way to go to see the Stanley Cup. So the league itself, where does it fit? It does get players into Division One, and it's usually conduit players, meaning you're using this league, the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League, to get into the CC, to get into the BCHL, MJ, the SJ, all these other leagues. It's a stepping stone league for the most part. It does get D3 exposure. It's much better exposure than the SIJHL, and the level of quality of teams is much better too. So it gets, even at the D3 level, you've got different echelons of talented teams, just like you do in pros and just like you do in Division One. And the amount of time and effort used to scout this league is a little bit higher than the SIJHL. It does not get the same level of exposure as the CCHL in Canada or the AJHL or the BCHL, but it has a place and it fits well, and it's a good level of hockey. So that's about all I got to say about the league. I know you wanted to talk about a couple matchups and a couple players.
Yeah. If you want to pull up the standings again, just so people can follow along, but there's a couple matchups at the for their East Division that are number 1 versus number 2. So you got the Timmins Rock, who are 22-5-2, going against the Hearst Lumberjacks, 21-7-2. They face off this weekend. It'll be interesting to see, how this one turns out, because again, if you look at their goals for, goals against, they're both pretty dominant in the league, and they're not giving up a whole lot of goals against. So somebody's going to have to this weekend, and we got a couple good matchups coming up too in the other division. But if we want to go for the player spotlight for that East Division, Timmins versus Hearst, the one kid that I picked, only because he's an American, he's got some lineage to him. He's on the Timmins team. His name's Greg Harley. If the name Harley sounds familiar, he's got a brother, Thomas Harley, who's a first-round draft pick, I think maybe 18th overall in the 2019 NHL draft for Dallas. He's a defenseman. He's a younger kid. He's a 2004 birth year, out of Syracuse, New York. So another New York guy by you. He's 5'11", 141 pounds, so real thin, real light. But from a point standpoint, he's still getting adjusted. 24 games played. He's got 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points.
Yeah, why am I not finding him here? Where am I missing him?
Go back to the roster side. He's a defenseman. So let's see. Maybe he's on the Hearst Lumberjacks team.
Yeah, I think he's on Hearst. Ha! It's you too. It's just not me tonight.
We're all over the place tonight.
I know. You can tell we do a lot of pre-production.
We got to fire our staff.
Yeah, they're on the way out the door. Okay. You said he's on Timmins?
Hearst.
Where are you? There you are. Okay, let's see if he exists. There he is. There he is. Okay, very good. Let's take a look at him. 5'11", 141. I never trust those, though. You go to watch a kid play, and that could have been put in, when he was a U14 player, unless he's played somewhere where they've officially changed it. Like you said, he's got some lineage. We'll go through that in a second, but Syracuse Nationals, then jumped up and played GTHL in Vaughan. That's the Greater Toronto Hockey League, good league. Then he played a little prep at Ridley. That's in between. Ridley sits in between Niagara Falls and Hamilton, I believe. I'm almost positive of that. I know the campus. I don't remember exactly where it sits. I've only been there a few times. And then he jumped to the OJ this year, and he's playing for Hearst currently now. I would imagine if we go and look at his dad, um, I think I know his dad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think he's coaching in the Syracuse program.
Yeah. So dad's coached the Syracuse Nationals recently. That's because his kid was on the team. Coached for University of North Texas. That's interesting. And here's a player that you can see played. His dad played University of Alberta, played in the AJ, and played at Alberta again. So came in and out. And it looks like his dad was a goalie. That's pretty bad. And looking at the sons, he's got 3 sons that have all played. And so, yeah, it's a hockey family. I think the daughter's the one that I might have known from coaching girls hockey a few years ago. I'm going to take a look at her. But the family's a hockey family. So let's see where she played. Yeah, she's playing pro hockey now, played at Robert Morris. And yeah, I'm pretty sure she is a 99. I've seen her play and know her. Not that that matters to anybody, but let's give her props, right?
And that's why we wanted to give Greg props for our player spotlight, not because he's going to dominate this weekend and be a player to watch necessarily, but the fact that he's a younger player playing in the league, he's got some lineage. He might be a player to, kind of keep tabs on. When you look at the Timmins roster, they're all Canadians. It's hard to necessarily have any, true background that we've seen or been in contact with that we can really highlight somebody that we know or have watched or scouted before. So we were trying to stick to, one of the Americans that we at least know something about or have seen them play and things like that. So that's why Greg got the nod for this weekend.
Well, very good. It's good to see. Yeah, here's a perfect example. He's obviously already on the radar for the OJHL. Younger player. His family's got Canadian roots, so I'm sure his dad has got plenty of connections up in that area. Especially since the kid was a Ridley kid, he played prep school up in Canada. And that league, if I'm not mistaken, is a combined league, Ridley's league, half American and half Canadian. And I just want to make sure on that because if I look at the CPHA, let's see what's made up of the league. Yeah, you look at here, Ridley, Stansted. These are all the Canadian side. They have 2 different leagues they play out of because I'm pretty sure they play Nichols. I'm pretty sure they play some of the American prep schools too in a combined league. And if they don't, Ridley gets around there. That's a quality program. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. Anyway, yeah, good luck to him this weekend. Good luck to that matchup. That's a perfect example of somebody that's going to move up to the OJHL. And I would imagine, because he's a Syracuse kid, maybe even work his way back down to the States, into the NAL, into the NCDC, into the USHL, depending on how his growth pattern is. So great to see. Let's get us back up here, Mike.
Yeah, and I was just going to add too, we've seen in the past too, when we've either had main camp or pre-draft camps, we've had kids from the NOJ that have been in those camps and they've turned heads when they're there. So, not that we didn't expect much when they were coming in, but once you see it live and you see how close they are in ability, and typically those kids are younger and it's more, they're not ready for the North American League right away or right then when we're watching them, but it's like, well, now they're on our radar. Let's see what league they end up playing in next year, and then we keep following them from there. I think
Go ahead.
when
I'm
we
sorry.
look at Greg, he's probably right there in that same category. He's an '04, so he's got a couple more years of junior hockey. Is he going to jump right from the NoJ into an all team? Maybe not, probably not, but he may take that next step, like you said, into the OJ or into a different or maybe higher level Canadian junior league. And then he'll get his opportunity, or maybe he goes to the NCDC, or you never know. But the point that I'm trying to make is we see these kids that are younger playing in that league, and then they make a step the next following year into a completely different league, and then they're more likely ready for that opportunity to come into the North American League.
Yeah, fully agree with you there. And I just got a text. This wasn't coming from a message. This came from a text and said, "Can you show the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League and show what Americans are coming, or excuse me, what Division One players come out of the North American?" So basically, what they want is just a sample similar to what we did with the SIJHL. So I can do that.
Yeah.
So pull up the NoJo. We look at this. We're slow there. I'll pull it up on the main screen here. And let me expand that out a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now if I go down to the green button is deployed, and I go over here to NCAA. We just hit NCAA there, and we'll filter it out. Remember, this is 4 or 5 or 6 years of players over the NoJo. This isn't kids that came out fresh last year. This list here, and why are we not getting anybody from the NoJo? I know that's not correct. So I just looked at this the other day. There's 10 or 15 kids, and I'm not sure why it's not pointed up. All positions, all teams, NCAA, NoJo, apply filter. That's the only thing I've got filtered. I know there's a few kids there. It's not zero. So whatever, probably because I've been jumping back and forth. I've got some other things built in the cookies for something filtering besides that. So I will make sure that next week we'll look at this and I'll pull that up. But if I try to refresh, I've been in this situation before. On draft day, this happened to us when we were doing the NAHL draft. I was trying to use elite prospects and some filtering to do it, and one filter stuck. And so everything it gave me just kept giving me that, it had to go that filter too. So if I added another filter on top, it was just jamming the whole system up. So I will get that fresh and make sure that next week. And if I forget, Mike, make sure you mention that to me, and I will make sure that works. So anyway, yeah, something's stuck on that. Let's not worry about that. One more question. If anybody else has questions, we're going to be on for a couple more minutes. Just jump on. Any thoughts on playing in one of the 3 Alaska teams in the NAHL? Good experience. Mike, you jump on that first.
Yeah, I think, it's very unique to obviously have a player who's, from the mainland of the United States to get an opportunity to go out to Alaska. So that in itself from a life experience is great. I have a kid that I'm real close to and coached growing up through his youth who plays for one of the Alaskan NA teams, and he's in his first season. So he's getting adjusted to a lot of different things, including the level of play and whatnot, but he loves it. It's a great opportunity for him to, us being here in Chicago, going all the way out to Alaska. It's probably the only time he'll ever be out there, but it's really good hockey. He plays for the Fairbanks team, and I think at the time, I haven't looked at the standings here recently, but I think they were like 5th in all of the NA.
Yeah, they're on the screen right behind you now.
Yeah, so it looks like they might have dropped a game or two recently here, but they're having a really good season. You have the Anchorage team who's new to the league. I guess you'd consider them newer, even though they've had programs in the past, but under new leadership and ownership, they're building their program. And I think was last year their first expansion year back in, or was it 2 years ago now?
I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. No, we had 2 teams from there last year. I get confused now. Ever since the pandemic, everything
It all bleeds together.
Yeah, but they're all playoff bound this year. That's great. And yes, they do tend to get exposure up there. And part of it is because they come down for clumps of time into Minnesota to play in their league games against the Wilderness, over into Wisconsin with their two teams, the St. Louis. That's usually clumped together. So they come down and play. They stay. There's been times where the Canadian, excuse me, the Alaskan teams come down and spend multiple weeks, like a few weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And I'm not sure exactly. Because I don't follow those teams very often. I just kind of look at them, in a cursory way to see what players that we may have had an eye on that ended up on those teams. But yeah, it's a good division. They play good hockey, and they're all playoff bound teams right now, which means they have the ability to end up in Blaine, Minnesota at the end of the year for the championship. So if you're playing on a team that's playoff bound, that's a good thing. You're getting more exposure then. Remember, when the playoffs kick in, colleges are usually winding down or done, and then they're starting to watch more hockey TV. They're starting to drive out and watch some games around. And what happens is you drop off a few teams on the bottom. Those bottom teams in the North American Hockey League, if they've got an older player in his last year, they tend to get them onto rosters that are playoff bound. Not every kid, but that's kind of an unwritten rule you try to do. If you know you're not going to make the playoffs, try to get your roster of senior players, last year junior players, onto the upper rosters. They get better. They get more exposure. The team gets better, and they're playing throughout the playoffs. They might pick up 3, 4, 8, 9 games at the end of the year, with the possibility of a lot more exposure because colleges are done and they're watching the league more.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, for Kenai, they had a player that played for them, I want to say 3 years ago. His name was Theo Thrun, and he got committed to Western Michigan playing in the North American League. And Western does not commit. I went to Western Michigan. They do not commit too many kids that play in the North American League. And he got committed out of playing in the North American League. He wasn't somebody that got that commitment as a 15, 16-year old and then
Right.
ended up in the league. He got committed out of Kenai. So, there's programs that are watching those Alaskan teams as much
Yeah,
as they are any other team.
and a big thing to talk about when you're talking about the North American Hockey League is, you know, USHL, BCHL, North American Hockey League, you may not have a choice. If you want to play in the league and the only team that drafts you or tenders you comes out of Alaska, you're packing your gold miner's bag. You're getting the dogs all strapped up and you're ready to go. That's the dog sled is what I was referring to there.
Iditarod.
Okay. Yeah, you're into the Iditarod of, it's not. I think that's a big misnomer about the top leagues. If you're playing Tier 3 junior hockey, you can say no to that team. You've got options. You've got 3 different leagues. Only one of them is USA Hockey. Uh, that league uses a draft system, but that draft is not as binding, meaning if you say no, they're probably going to get rid of you and let you move on. And you can wait it out until they pick their roster and you can move on. So the difference between choice, you have choice at Tier 3. You have very, very limited choice depending on how you come to the league. Now, you can get tender and say, I'm not showing up. And they, before you actually sign a tender and say, no, I don't want a tender from you. If you get drafted, you can go through the process and just not show up to main camp or show up to the pre-draft, whatever they want you to show up to. And most likely they're not going to put you on the summer roster. And most likely that they're going to, let you go free. If you're a good player at that level, if you're USHL bound and you're BCHL bound and you're null bound as far as that level of talent, well, you might be able to choose leagues. You might say, hey, look, I was drafted low in the USHL, but I really want to talk to the BCHL, and either through your advisor or directly, you can reach out to the BCHL and see if they have a home for you. But the risk is doing it as a free agent, you might miss opportunities versus getting tendered and drafted. If you only get exposed or drafted into the null, there's less chance that you're going to, if you're drafted to the null or tendered to the null, there's very little chance that you're going to be playing USHL or BCHL unless everybody already knows that you're a high level player. But if you're just the average player being drafted at the null level, that might be the only thing you get. Period. that you're going to have to go there. Now you can request a trade. Don't do it. Yeah, you can decide to try it on your own and see where you end up. Not recommended, man. Not recommended. So, Mike, you got anything on that?
No, I think you're right. I mean, every scenario is, different depending on what's going on, with that particular kid, and you know, there's a lot, there's just a lot of moving pieces that kids are always trying to catch, the best opportunity or the next opportunity, and they never take control of their current opportunity, and they end up kind of going down a path to nowhere. And that's kind of your point of requesting trades and not reporting or not showing up. And it's like, you see that happen, you kind of track where the kids end up, over time, and it's usually nowhere
Are
because
you
it's
an
not just
attorney? I live with one of those. I'm used to the answer when I ask them well, it depends. And,
yes.
this back and forth. Come on, just say it. You're going to end up playing somewhere, and it's most likely going to be dictated by who wants you, not by
Yeah,
you. Come on, don't sit on the
definitely.
fence. I don't want you sitting on the fence, man.
Well, you have to
You need
give
to
me a specific instance, and then I can tell you, yes, no, don't do that. You shouldn't have done this. But if it's just generic, I mean, there's so many variables to that it's hard to take a stance one way or the other.
Hey, Jim Boeheim just called. He wants his shirt back.
I know you got your sunglasses on. I didn't realize how bright this thing was going to be on camera.
Do you even know who Jim Boeheim is?
Yes, Syracuse's basketball coach.
Okay, very good. I could have went to Sparky Anderson called and wants his shirt back. That was my next one. Or who else got
Why
going?
Sparky Anderson? You lost me on that one.
Don't you remember back when they had those putrid orange jackets that he wore out of the dugout? Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
he with the big blue D on it. But
Yeah. The road jerseys.
yeah, and he used to wear always had the jacket on. It was orange, and I was like, oh, is that horrible? As I sat at home eating my Paramount potato chips, only made in Flint, Michigan, and drinking my Vernors growing up. So that was my age at the time. Now that puts me into a whole category, huh? So,
Yes.
all right. Anything else we got to talk about tonight?
I don't believe so.
Good. We need to go back and regroup. Maybe get some sleep. Get rid of these dark eyes, things under my eyes. So we talked about. Did we talk about where we're going? I don't know where I'm going. Do you know where you're going this weekend?
I'm home. So the good news is, I won't be traveling or getting on a plane. So you got some reprieve from those conversations. But yeah, we just have a couple games. Our schedule, coaching wise, is going to get a little bit lighter as we get closer to Christmas and the holidays. So that'll be nice and refreshing when that plays itself out. But I'll probably take a look at some of the AAA games that are local here in Chicago. If it's just two Chicago teams playing against each other, get out and see them a little bit. Or if there's nothing really here local, I'll jump online and check out some games that have players that we're tracking.
I think next week you should bring in all the plastic captain's wings that all the different planes give you when you walk on, and the stewardess is holding your hand, and then she takes you up to the cabin and introduces you to the pilot, and then they walk you to your seat and give you little wings you can wear. So bring those all in, and we'll look at all the different styles of wings you got over the last couple of years here.
Yeah, I got those little alcohol, that are, I don't even know what you call those things, but the little ones that are in the mini fridge usually at your hotel.
Okay, real quick, last comment here. We went a little early, and I'm surprised we even retained an audience at all tonight, as silly and disheveled as we were. But Avon Old Farms Christmas tournament next week. Aware of that, and great place to see some hockey. A little cold barn, but cool place to go watch some hockey. I got some stories about that. Won't share it tonight, but I've got an Avon Old Farms story from scouting and watching hockey up there one time, where I drove my RV. I took my my Class C RV up there, thinking I was going to be real smart, park in the parking lot. Didn't work out so well. We'll talk about that later. Hey, thanks for watching tonight. If you're if you're watching live tonight, a couple of things. You can always go to our website, which is juniorhockeyadvisor.com. You can always jump onto our Facebook page our Facebook discussion group, which is Junior Hockey Advisor. Remember, we're not advisors. We're here to talk about the junior process, the junior teams, the junior coaches. The web broadcast you're watching right now, the podcast you're listening to right now, this is strictly Junior Hockey Live. Bloomer and I just get on and we talk about teams, players, leagues, and then the other ones we do are I do a one-on-one where I interview different key people in the hockey world, and then we also have Ask Me Anything. I usually do that on Sunday night or Monday night, and that's a broadcast that just goes into questions about the process and working through. I want to throw one plug in, and that plug is for chaos calls. If you're working through the whole process and you run into a crossroad, you got some decisions to make, things are a little bit confusing. I do 1 hour calls. They're called chaos calls, juniorhockeyadvisor.com. You can click the button, sign up for a chaos call. You get 1 hour with just me talking to you and working through the process. I am not an advisor. We look at the problem and we talk about solutions, and it's usually statistically based, meaning here's what the majority of people do, here's what some other people do. So great to do that. Please subscribe to the YouTube page, Junior Hockey Advisor. This is where the content is sitting, and the more we get on there, helps the algorithms helps us grow. And am I missing anything, Mike?
No, we just have to get as many like and subscribes on that YouTube page as we can, because we know you have a older demographic of your buddies that are following you on Facebook. We got to get the young and hip YouTube crowd getting in on this.
Yeah, I still have. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy one of those animation programs where I can script everything out, and then I've got some cool young blonde, ocean surfing guy, and maybe that would attract more. But yeah, I'm really good at attracting the 70 to 85-year-old women crowd. Got that down. So anyway,
everyone's got a niche.
Everybody's got a niche. Mike, thanks so much for tonight. Appreciate you coming on and helping. You pulled me through this whole thing because I wasn't on my A game or my B game tonight. And we'll see you guys all next week. And we'll probably be pretty consistent now on holding the slot, but probably we're still going back to our original broadcast time. Guess who is not the person that's screwing up the schedule? That would be me. Guess who keeps changing the schedule? That would be him.
Yes. My apologies to you, Jeff. You're the one that gets most inconvenienced.
No, the audience. So thank you so much, folks. Everybody have a great night, and we'll see you later.